When they came to the disciples, they saw a great crowd around them, and scribes arguing with them. And immediately all the crowd, when they saw him, were greatly amazed, and ran up to him and greeted him. And he asked them, "What are you arguing about with them?" And someone from the crowd answered him, "Teacher, I brought my son to you, for he has a spirit that makes him mute, and whenever it seizes him, it throws him down, and he foams and grinds his teeth, and becomes rigid. So I asked your disciples to cast it out, and they were not able." And he answered them, "O faithless generation, how long am I to be with you? How long am I to bear with you? Bring him to me." And they brought the boy to him, and the spirit saw him immediately. It convulsed the boy, and he fell on the ground and rolled about, foaming at the mouth. And Jesus asked his father, "How long has this been happening to him?" And he said, "From childhood, and it has often cast him into the fire and into water to destroy him. But if you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us." And Jesus said to him, "If you can, all things are possible for one who believes." Immediately the father of the child cried out and said, "I believe, help my unbelief." And when Jesus saw that a crowd came running together, he rebuked the unclean spirit, saying to it, "You mute and deaf spirit, I command you, come out of him and never enter him again." And after crying out and convulsing them terribly, it came out, and the boy was like a corpse, so that most of them said, "He is dead." But Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him up, and he arose. And when he had entered the house, his disciples asked him privately, "Why could we not cast it out?" And then he said to them, "This kind cannot be driven out by anything but prayer." Demons. Satan. And Sheol. The darkness will be exposed. On Into the Abyss. Man, that's a crazy story, though.
That is.
Like, there's a few things here. So this is right after they come down from the mountain of Transfiguration. A lot of people think, oh, it's probably Mount Tabor or whatever. They're like Mount Tabor or something. One of those two mountains. It was like they thought it was this different mountain or whatever. But I'm going to make the case that it's actually Mount Hermon. And what's really interesting is that the place they were at, they were right by Caesarea Philippi, which is like a town that's very close to the base of Mount Hermon. And it says that they went up a very tall mountain. Now, the mountain that everyone says that the Mount of Transfiguration is a very small mountain, like 750 feet tall. Like that's not that tall of a mountain. And it's actually a bit farther away from the city. But then Mount Hermon is like 1,500 something feet tall, and it's a lot closer to the city. And right when they get done, they come straight down. And this happens. So what's really interesting is that right here, they're like, "Why can't we cast it out?" And Jesus says to them, he's like, "This kind cannot be driven out by anything but prayer." This kind. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I see what you mean, yeah.
Jesus is talking about, like, this is another kind. That's why we picked this story to start with, because, I mean, that's like Jesus right there saying this kind cannot be driven out by anything but prayer.
Which implies, it implies that there are different kinds.
Exactly. Do you have any thoughts about it, this passage?
I don't know. I just think it's a great passage because it just shows the faith. Like, if you believe, anything is possible. It's told that throughout the Bible, and it is shown in this passage.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is what the Spirit does to the boy when it sees Jesus. It convulses the boy, and he fell on the ground and rolled about, foaming at the mouth. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty bad. And that's just right after he sees Jesus. But then he says that it's been happening to him since childhood, and it often casts him into fire and water to kill him. That's pretty bad. See, like last episode we were talking about, what are the limits of the demon's power? But like this demon was straight up trying to kill this kid.
Yeah, that he trying to drown him, trying to burn him alive.
That's scary right there.
That is.
So that's crazy. And then when it comes out of him, he like looks like he's dead. He's like that crazy.
Yeah, that's also a scary passage to show that demons can do that.
Yeah. And the importance of Mount Hermon right here is that that's the mountain that the fallen angels came down on to have children with humans, according to Enoch, which I take as probably factual, at least that part. which is really interesting because I mean, the Greek gods always came from the Mount Olympus, and all these
Yeah,
things. They're always connected with mountains and stuff. So I think it's really interesting. But what's really interesting is that if the demons or some of the demons are like spirits of dead giants, then it's really interesting that there's like a super powerful one at the base of Mount Hermon where the giants would have began. Is what I'm thinking.
that is interesting.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I think it's very an interesting idea there. Yeah. So, any other thoughts before we move on to the next thing?
not really.
Okay, cool. All right. So the next thing kind of we're going to talk about is what kinds does the Bible actually talk about. So we're going to go through like there's certain entities and then there's groups of entities. So we have Satan, who is the prince of demons, but he's not a demon, he's a fallen angel. Separate things there. Just because you're the prince of something doesn't mean you're all those people or all those things. Like a shepherd is not a sheep.
This is true. This is
It's a
true.
human, but he has a bunch of sheeps under him that he protects.
Yeah.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
So just because you're the prince of demons doesn't mean you're a demon, because shepherds aren't sheep.
It's a good analogy.
That was a good analogy, yeah. All right, so the king of the abyss is Abaddon or Apollyon. Really interesting stuff. We talked about it in the one about Sheol, I think.
We did.
We
Yeah, we
have
did.
some of the sons of God. So I'll give you a few examples. Genesis 6 mainly talks about, well, it also mentions them in Job, and multiple times in Job, God talking about the foundations of the earth being laid. And it says, like, where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth, when all the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God shouted for joy? And then I've heard some people that are like, oh, well, the sons of God, they're always believers. And it's like, no, it's like, stop. Like, there's no believers at the foundation of the earth being laid. Like, what? Like, what? So,
Yeah.
anyway, and if it's used like that in the other passages, then we have to assume you can't just be like, oh, well, this one. It's not. This one is not angels. It's like that's not. No, that's not how you. It's not
Yeah.
how you do hermeneutics. Okay, and then another place that they're mentioned is Deuteronomy 32. I've heard a lot of little rebuttals to this, but it says, when the Most High gave to the nations their inheritance, when he divided mankind, he fixed the borders of the peoples according to the number of the sons of God. Now, what's really interesting is that the Dead Sea Scrolls are the ones that say the sons of God. Okay, the Septuagint says the angels of God. Okay, you can't get more clear than that. But then the Masoretic text over here, one of the newer translations, is not as old as these other ones that we found, right? It's a newer, but some of our Bibles are off of it, so you gotta like be careful about which Bibles you're reading because of the translation. Some of them have like from newer translations or older. So anyway, but what it says is the sons of Israel, but it's like a newer text, the Masoretic text. It's a lot newer than the Dead Sea Scrolls, which has the sons of God, and then which I don't know their age compared to the Masoretic text with the Septuagint, but the Septuagint, the Greek version, usually has a lot of stuff really, really good, and it says the angels of God. So I just wanted to clarify there. Anyway, so some of the fallen angels are quote unquote or used to be the sons of God, but they're called that anyway. So we have the Shadim. Okay, we'll talk about this a little bit later. We have the Teraphim. We'll talk about that a little later too. The powers of the heavens, the powers of the air, the elemental spirits, the rulers, authorities, cosmic powers, and spiritual forces of evil, the princes, the spirits of the Raphaim, the Oberim, the Matim, the spirits. Okay, that's a little list for you. Okay, but there's a lot to go. There's a lot of stuff going on there. You know what I'm saying?
We got a lot of content for this episode.
Yeah, there's a lot of content that we're gonna be diving into right there. So yeah, that's a quick list. Does that kind of surprise you though, that many different things are mentioned in the Bible?
It does.
And this isn't even angels. Like angels are a totally different topic with a bunch of other ones that we can talk about.
Foreshadowing. Yeah,
But
the crazy amount. It's just.
I know, right? That's kind of crazy. And we can't get stuck thinking there's only angels and demons, because the spiritual realm is a lot more. What's it called? It's a lot more varietous. It has a lot more variety than just two things and then God. Like, no, that's not what the Bible.
It's not just black and white. It's not just black and white.
There's a lot of stuff going on in between. There's a lot more on the good side and a lot more on the bad side that we don't talk about all the time.
Yeah.
So, any other thoughts before we move on?
Nope. I say we jump straight into the next one.
All right. Straight into the elemental spirits. This is a very interesting one. Okay, I'll get into some of these crazy verses. We'll just kind of talk about it, discuss what in the world this could be talking about. So Colossians 2:8 says, "See to it that no one takes you captive by philosophy and empty deceit, according to human tradition, according to the elemental spirits of the world, and not according to Christ." Again, that's Colossians 2:8. So it sounds like it's connecting the elemental spirits, talking about it's like philosophy, empty deceit, like all that kind of stuff, right? And it seems like it's false philosophies based on human traditions that these elemental spirits are like using to deceive people. The next one we have is Colossians 2:20 through 22. It says, "If with Christ you died to the elemental spirits of the world, why, as if you were still alive in the world, do you submit to regulations? Do not handle, do not taste, do not touch, referring to things that all perish as they are used, according to human precepts and teachings," which is really interesting. It's kind of talking about the old covenant stuff, I think.
It
You
sounds
know,
like it.
that's what it sounds like because like that's what their rules were. But Colossians, so Paul is over here saying like, why you still listen to all that stuff? You died to the elemental spirits of the world. It sounds like the elemental spirits teach false religious practices.
Yeah,
Really, really interesting. We got some Galatians. Okay, Galatians says, "In the same way, we also, when we were children, were enslaved to the elementary principles of the world. But when the fullness of time had come, God sent forth His Son, born of a woman under the law, to redeem those who were under the law, so that we might receive adoption as sons." That's Galatians 4:3-5, and that is talking about the elementary. It sounds like the elemental spirits enslave people through religion.
it does.
Okay, it says, "But now that you have come back to know God, or rather to be known by God, how can you turn back again to the weak and worthless elementary principles of the world, whose slaves you want to be once more?" Galatians 4:9. So yeah, I think they're definitely. It's elemental makes me kind of think of, you know, Out to the Last Airbender, fire, earth, water, air.
Yeah,
Um, and I don't know. Do you think they could be connected to? Well, I mean, they're called the elemental spirits.
I mean, yeah,
The Greek here is stoichia or stoichia or stoichia. One of those. That's what the Greek word is. The stoichia of the world. It's really interesting because elementary spirits. I mean, they could be just connected to elements and stuff too, like what I was saying, like fire, earth, water, air. But I wouldn't be surprised because that's what their name says. I don't know. What do
yeah,
you think?
yeah. I mean, you kind of said it. Yeah, they're related to elements because I mean their name is Element Spirits.
Yeah, and it
They're
seems
just
like they
making
have a
more
lot to
sense.
do with false religions.
That is true. Well, I think also what's kind of talking about with false religion is not really science, but the natural of the world. They can get everything is natural, so nothing's supernatural. So then they just have a natural way of thinking of everything, and then they don't believe in anything that they don't see. So they don't believe in God and all that.
Yeah, I agree with that totally. I think science, like secular science, is a religion in and of itself. Like
Yeah,
only believing the science and nothing else. Materialism. Yeah, I think they definitely would be connected to that kind of thing too. So really, really interesting stuff. Another one that's really interesting is the Teraphim. Now, the Teraphim were household gods. Now, we'll get into kind of what that means, but Genesis 31:19 says, "Laban had gone to shear his sheep, and Rachel stole her father's household gods." Okay, that's really interesting. Second Kings 23:24 says, "Moreover, Josiah put away the mediums and the necromancers and the household gods and the idols and all the abominations that were seen in the land of Judah and in Jerusalem, that he might establish the words of the law that were written in the book that Hilkiah the priest found in the house of the Lord." So, household gods and the idols, different things. So, household gods are not idols. First Samuel 19:13 says the teraphim were served. Oh, sorry. It says Michael took it. So this is okay. Before I read this verse, I'll give a little background. So this is David, and he's with his wife Michael, or Michael or something. Michal, Michael, and so he needs to escape Saul. And so what she does is she takes an image, one of these household gods, the teraphim, and laid it on the bed and put a pillow of goat's hair as its head to like look like hair, and it covered it with clothes. So she kind of like used one of the teraphim to like kind of, it looked like a human. So she like, it's like a statue, right? And
yeah.
so she like made it look like it was David in the bed. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Really interesting. The teraphim were also served by priests with an ephod and a shrine. Judges 17:5 says, and the old man Micah had a shrine, and he made an ephod in the household gods and ordained one of his sons who became his priest. So there's a few more, but what are you thinking so far?
Not too much. I think it's it's another type of demon. It is interesting that it's called like a house or an idol, like what's called just kind of
Household
easy,
god?
yeah, household god. Yeah, don't have really too many comments on it, but yeah,
It's really interesting though.
it is.
Like
It is.
it seems like they're connected to certain families or households, like just like in their name, obviously, but they also seem to be connected to divination and idolatry, which is really interesting. So 1 Samuel 15:23 says, "For rebellion is as the sin of divination, and presumption is as iniquity and idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has also rejected you from being king." 1 Samuel 15:23. Anyway, so it's connecting that kind of stuff to divination, iniquity. I'd see it's connecting, that kind of stuff to idolatry. It also says that for the king of Babylon stands at the parting of the way at the head of the two ways to use divination. And then it says he shakes the arrows, he consults the teraphim, he looks at the liver. Ezekiel 21:21. Although looking at the liver thing was like an old Roman practice where they'd cut open the animal, look at its liver, and somehow tell the future from that. I was
That's
like, when in the world is
that's
that?
weird.
But like, I mean, the Bible talks about it right here. They're looking at the liver thing with the. I mean, that's like what they did. It's like kind of weird. I don't know.
That is kind
I
of
don't know
weird.
how that worked, in my opinion. Like, I have no idea how that worked. What in the world are they doing?
I mean,
dog?
back in the day though, they had to try to find something. I mean, they didn't have technology.
Yeah, I mean, I even heard of a way. What they do is they would like try to figure out the will of the gods by they would like look up in the sky, make a square with their hands or whatever, and then see what are the bird patterns that are flying through my hand right now? Like as in like they would put it up to the sky, see if there was any birds flying through, like where they like the little square that their hands made, and see that the like whatever formations the birds were making, and they would like tell the future by that.
Again, that's kind of weird.
Like, what are you doing, dog? Like, what is that? What
Imagine
is
seeing
that?
someone doing that in today's world.
You just walk him down the street, right? You just look over. You see this dude, like, oh, bro, look at these birds. They're dictating my future. Like, what are you doing? Like, that's not okay. Maybe don't do that. I don't know.
Yeah, don't
Maybe
do
you
that.
shouldn't be doing. Well, you shouldn't because that's divination. Just don't do that. Zechariah over here. Check this out. 10:2. For the household gods utter nonsense, and the diviners see lies. They tell false dreams and give empty consolation. Therefore, the people wander like sheep. They are afflicted for lack of a shepherd. Ooh. So, what
Ooh.
it's saying here is that they are liars. They deceive. They tell tons of lies. All the diviners and stuff, they see lies and they see false dreams and stuff because of these bad boys.
I feel like that's a common theme with
Yeah,
demons.
exactly. They're all bad.
They're all bad. Well, also with
And-
like the deceiving, they lie.
Deceiving. Like, seems like the different ones deceive in different ways.
Yeah, but they all do deceive.
They all do deceive.
Yes,
It's very, very interesting.
it is.
All right, let's.
Because if you think about it, real
Yeah.
quick, if you think about it, God is the truth. The Bible is the truth. So they have to deceive people so they don't know the truth by deceiving. So that's what they have to do. The only way they can win over people is to lie and deceive from the truth. So I mean, just to add on to that.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. From there, we are going to go on to the gods of the nations. Whoop, 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 whoop. Gotta specify little g gods over here. Okay.
Little G.
No, little g, little g. I know we're doing this in the quote unquote demons episode, but they're not demons. We're kind of like lumping all of the fallen beings into the quote unquote demons episodes, but they're not all demons. But like,
Yeah.
they're like fallen spiritual being things. So
They're bad people.
they're bad things.
Bad things.
Okay, now I know a lot of people like are going to disagree with me here, but Deuteronomy 32, which talks a lot about it, what it's mainly about is God's relationship to Israel and how Israel has rebelled from Him all like throughout time. Okay, in humanity. Okay, has a few little winks at Jesus in there, but that's it. Okay, in the story when it's talking about all these different things, okay, it starts talking about Deuteronomy 32, or it's in Deuteronomy 32, it starts talking about the Tower of Babel as it's going through the rebellion. It's like talking about how man has rebelled against God. Okay, So it says, we already read it before, but I'll read it one more time. It says, when the Most High gave to the nations their inheritance, when he divided mankind, he fixed the borders of the peoples according to the number of the sons of God. Now, the Septuagint, the Greek version, very old, very fire. What it says is, I don't want to hear any arguments from those people out there. It says, when the Most High divided the nations, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the bounds of the nations according to the number of the angels of God. Mic drop.
Boom.
Walk away. Just walk away. Just don't even argue with me. You know what I'm saying? But like, anyway, so there's a few other little passages where this is used. There was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord or Yahweh, and Satan also came among them. Okay, so sons of God. Then it says also Shadim, these territorial spirits. It's another name for the Elohim. Pretty sure. The Elohim who ruled the nations, like the sons of God, the sons of God who, ruled the nations, they're territorial spirits. Deuteronomy 32:17 says, they sacrificed to demons, Shadim, that were no gods, to gods, Elohim, they had never known, to new gods that had come recently, whom your fathers had never dreaded. Now, a lot of people, so in the actual English, I'll read the English version. It says, they sacrificed to demons that were no gods, to gods they had never known, to new gods that had come recently, whom your fathers had never dreaded. Isn't that kind of weird? The way that's worded in English, it's like, what are you talking about? It says they sacrificed to demons, but it says that were no gods. And then it says two gods they had never known. You're like, what? And then it says two new gods that come recently. You're like, what am I?
What are you trying to say?
What are you trying to say? But then the Hebrew says they sacrificed to Shadim that were no gods. And then it says to Elohim that they had never known. Different. Anyway, different words here. So it's not as it's not as like, what is happening? It's like, oh, well, that makes more sense. It's talking about some different things here. Okay. Psalm 82, 2-4 is God judging these sons of God over the nations for being unjust in their rule. I'm going to read the whole Psalm 82. So this is the ESV. This whole thing, he's talking to these angels. But then at the very end, it's a plea from man. So it's, all right. Here we go. I'll start. All right, ready?
Yep.
So it says, God has taken his place in the divine council. That's interesting. In the midst of the gods, he holds judgment. That's really interesting. Okay.
Very.
How long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked? This is God talking to these gods, or little g gods, the divine council, whatever. Okay. It says, give justice to the weak and the fatherless. Maintain the right of the afflicted and the destitute. Rescue the weak and the needy. Deliver them from the hand of the wicked. And then it says, they have neither knowledge nor understanding. They walk about in darkness. All the foundations of the earth are shaken. Then it says, I said, you are God's sons of the Most High, all of you. Nevertheless, like men, you shall die and fall like any prince. Arise, O God, judge the earth, for you shall inherit all the nations. All right, this is a very interesting psalm. Like, crazy interesting psalm. What do you think about that? Before I get into it a little bit.
No, really, I mean, it's a very packed psalm, as you said.
Yeah.
But, like, right off the back, once you start reading the Divine Council, I mean, that's already a whole episode on its own to talk about. And yeah, it's just a packed verse. I don't really have too many comments on it. But
and then it says, in the midst of the gods, he holds judgment. And you're like, what do you mean by that?
What do you mean by that?
And you're like, what? And then it says, and then it starts talking about how they're judging unjustly and stuff. And people are always getting uncomfortable. They're like, why are you calling them gods? There's only one God. Yeah, I agree. Yahweh is the only God. But he does say to these dudes, he's like, you are gods, little g, or you are Elohim, plural, sons of the Most High, all of you. So God says it too. Like, okay, look, by little g gods, they're not omniscient, they're not all powerful, they're not any of those things. But in the ancient times, they would have used that word, and they would have said Elohim, and they would have used it as plural when they were talking about the gods. But if they used it as singular, Elohim, capital E, they would have been talking about God, like our God, right?
Yeah.
Yahweh, the God of gods, the one who created it all. Okay. Anyway, yeah, just to specify, obviously, we're talking about angelic beings that were created. Obviously, they're not all powerful or all knowing or anything, but God does say, you are gods, sons of the Most High, you are Elohim. So, just saying, if someone has a problem with me saying that, read Psalm 82, God says it too. Anyway, what's really interesting at the very end, it says, for you shall inherit all the nations. Again, calling back to like this thing where they're over nations. But then when Jesus died and rose from the dead, he freed all the nations and he inherited them all. Here's the good part. What are the goat demons? Yeah.
Very interesting topic.
Yeah, extremely interesting. Okay, Leviticus 17:7, guys. Leviticus 17:7. Now, this is going to blow your mind holes, guys. All right. Leviticus 17:7 says, "So they shall no more sacrifice their sacrifices to goat demons after whom they whore. Shall be a statute forever for them throughout their generations."
Ooh.
And what's really interesting, goat demons. What? I have so many questions. Okay, here's what's really interesting is that word right there is Sair or Serim. Okay, this gets kind of crazy. All right. So the same word, guess what? Is used for satyrs. Okay. So Isaiah 13:21 says, "But wild animals will lie down there, and their houses will be full of howling creatures. There ostriches will dwell, and there wild goats will dance." That word is Sair, the same word that's goat demons. I mean, I've never seen a wild goat dance. So first of all, that English translation is lacking. What you doing, ESV? Come on. It's not wild goats, bro. Talking about satyrs. Because the Hebrew, same word, goat demons, Anyway. And what's even crazier is that the same word is translated in the Septuagint, coming in clutch, as satyrs. Again, so Isaiah 34:11 says, "And for a long time birds and hedgehogs and ibises and ravens shall dwell in it, and the measuring line of desolation shall be cast over it, and satyrs shall dwell in it." Isaiah 34:11. That is the Septuagint version, the Greek version. Okay, so yes, that kind of blows a lot of people's minds. I know.
My mind is blown right now.
That's what I'm saying. The Bible talks about goat demons. Like,
Yeah.
What? I had to get this in here because we talked about it a little bit before. We talked a little bit before in our trailer thing, and I wanted to get into it a little bit before,
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, come on. No one can ever say that the Bible is boring. No one can ever say that.
Yeah.
Any thoughts about that? I mean, come on, that's crazy.
That is crazy. I'm still baffled by that first verse you read, how they are no longer will sacrifice to goat demons.
Dude, that's a straight up verse.
I know. And
that's a straight up verse.
What are they doing?
Like, what? How did you see that? How did you? I don't know. Like, what do you?
I mean, I don't even know. Goat demons.
Dude, what's a stupid goat demon?
I have no clue.
It's probably some kind of satyr thing, but what? And then Isaiah uses them as a punishment. He says, after these cities will be destroyed by God, as punishments because they're horrible cities,
Mm-hmm.
He's like, and satyrs shall dwell there. And it's that's a bad thing. So I think they're very related because they have the same word and stuff. But anyway, really interesting stuff.
I just thought of something.
Yeah.
So goat demons, as we've been hearing, are very evil creatures. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking, Jesus is represented as a lamb.
And a lion.
And a lion. But what is the opposite of a lamb? A goat.
I don't know. What is it? A goat.
I don't really know if it's the exact opposite, but I'm just kind of saying. It's a goat. So, I mean, could a goat demon, when they're worshiping a goat demon, could they also be technically worshiping Satan? Could that be kind of
I think if they worship anything other than God, like those demons and stuff, I think it points to Satan. I think that's why they worship.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you're not worshiping God, then who are you serving? Satan.
True.
And if
I'm saying
you're not serving, yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
100%,
they know the figure of Satan and they're worshiping the figure, they're worshiping Satan.
And what's really interesting is that, the Satanists we got into a little bit on the Goat Man Part 2 episode, I think, but not episode, but the Monsters Explored. If you want to go check that out, I know those aren't as high quality as these, but they're still kind of fire. We're just getting started figuring out how to do this kind of stuff. So if you want, they do still have some really good information. So go check that out on YouTube only. But they serve this thing called the Baphomet, which we're not going to show pictures because it's really demonic. And if you even don't look this up, but if you look up a Baphomet, right, you get all these pictures of goats with pentagrams behind them, all these really creepy things that we don't want to get into there. But goats are always kind of demonic.
Yeah.
Just wanted to kind of get that in there. Anyway, any other thoughts before we move on?
Not really. I agree with you.
All right.
Especially goats are demonic. Let's just say that.
That's kind of creepy.
Yeah.
I mean, like they have square pupils. Like, what are you doing? Like rectangle pupils. Like, stop that.
Never looking at a goat the same way.
It's like creepy. Just like, don't do that. Okay. We'll mention a few more. We'll plug these in for the hybrids episode. We got desert demons, the howling creatures, the sirens. We'll just talk about vampires later. I know that's kind of crazy, but just
Kind of crazy.
werewolves. Hold on, we'll talk about it later, and that kind of stuff. So obviously, we have Bible stuff here, but don't get crazy. Don't get crazy about it.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's demonic. It's another demonic thing.
So make sure to stay tuned when we talk about this.
The darkness is darker than we think, is all I'll say.
Yes.
Anyway, there's a lot more dark things that the darkness does that they want to keep in darkness, if you know what I mean. That was kind of deep.
That's like a full-on riddle right there.
That was a riddle right there.
Everyone's going to be trying to solve it.
They're like, what does that mean? They're like, what is this nonsense? Okay.
Decipher
Decipher what he's talking about. Okay, hopefully you guys don't have to decipher most of the stuff we talk about. We try to keep it very straightforward. We use a ton of Bible verses just to support us, but we try to keep it very straightforward, not like super crazy,
Yeah.
I mean, we'll make it a little unhinged sometimes, like slightly unhinged, like one hinge off, but like there's still always the hinge of the Bible. We're not gonna we don't go past the Bible. The Bible is what we talk about, So
Yeah.
All right, so we are going to talk about rulers, authorities, cosmic powers, and spiritual forces of evil. So the Bible doesn't actually talk a ton about these, but talks a bit. It mentions them, and usually if it mentions them, obviously it's like, what are you talking about there? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
for by him all things were created in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or domains or rulers or authorities.
All right. Right there. Those are some angelic level things. Like, don't know exactly. I mean, that's like archangels, and then it doesn't say archangels in there, but we know archangels from other things. We have archangels, we have messengers, and there's like rulers, authorities, powers, and that kind of stuff. And then Ephesians 6:12, finally be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. Put on the full armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against, here we go, the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Now, I've heard some people twist this and they're like, oh, the rulers and authorities, but it literally says we do not wrestle against flesh and blood. So obviously this is spiritual stuff, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so
the Bible doesn't contradict itself.
Obviously, it was stating fact, and that's the fact.
Fact.
Okay, factual fact.
Factual facts.
Okay. Well, we're gonna do a little speed run. Check this out. The Obarim. Check this out. Says, here we go. On that day, I will give to Gog a place for burial in Israel, the valley of the travelers east of the sea. It will block the travelers, for there Gog and all his multitude will be buried. It will be called the valley of Hamon Gog. Ezekiel 39:11. So there's something mentioned in this passage that refers to the Obarim. It's in the Hebrew. It means those who have passed over, which is probably talking about, his multitude that would be. Obviously, it's connected to giant somehow because of Gog. Pretty sure he's kind of gianty. I don't know exactly. They're really interesting. The Metim, some demons are the spirits of the dead, or the Metim, and says, and when they say to you, inquire of the mediums and the necromancers who chirp and mutter, should not a people inquire of their God? Should they inquire of the dead, or Metim, on behalf of the living? Isaiah 8:19. So, we got that. We have, check this out. We're going to do a little speed run here. The spirits. Now, this sounds a little crazy. So 1 John 4:3 says, in every spirit that does not confess Jesus is not from God. This is the spirit of the Antichrist, which you heard was coming and now is in the world already. Luke 13:11 says, and there was a woman who had a disabling spirit for 18 years. She was bent over and could not fully straighten herself. That's kind of crazy. 2 Timothy 1:7 says there's a spirit of fear. For God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power and love and self-control. There's a spirit of slavery. For you did not receive the spirit of slavery to fall back into fear, but you have received the spirit of adoption as sons, by whom we cry, Abba, Father. Romans 8:15. There's a spirit of divination. As we were going to the place of prayer, we were there met by a slave girl who had a spirit of divination and brought her owners such much gain by fortune telling. Acts 16:16. There's a spirit of prostitution. My people inquire of a piece of wood, and their walking staff gives them oracles. For a spirit of whoredom has led them astray, and they have left their God to play the whore. Hosea 4:12. Very strong.
Very.
There's a spirit of uncleanliness, and on that day declares the Lord of hosts, I will cut off the names of the idols from the land, so that they shall be remembered no more, and also I will remove from the land the prophets and the spirit of uncleanliness. Zechariah 13:2. There's like three more. There's the spirit of the world. Now we have received not the spirit of the world, but the spirit who is from God, that we might understand the things freely given us by God. 1 Corinthians 2:12. There is the spirit of stupor. As it is written, God gave them a spirit of stupor, eyes that would not see and ears that would not hear, down to this very day. Romans 11:8. There is also the spirit of error. We are from God. Whoever knows God listens to us. Whoever is not from God does not listen to us. By this we know the spirit of truth and the spirit of error. 1 John 4:6.
A lot of verses.
Speed run right there. Anyway, any thoughts about that?
Really, just kind of going back to what we said about the world as a very natural view. A lot of people just have a natural view. So while I was kind of thinking when I was talking about, the spirit where the woman had, a crippling spirit. I don't know if it was actually crippling, but like where she was bent over, like hunched over and stuff like that.
Yep.
And I think that like a lot of the time, if we have anything like that in the modern world, you're like, oh, take these medicines, oh, do this treatment, and you'll eventually feel better. Like back then, they didn't really have that. So all they could really do is, especially if you're a religious person, all you could is like pray and trust in God. And so, I mean, really a lot of things that we see today could just be a spirit, like a disabling spirit. Yeah.
It's very, very interesting. Okay, I wanted to mention Lilith real quick, and then we'll talk about the princes. Give some further evidence about the angels, or quote-unquote little g gods, over the different nations. And then we will conclude by talking about how Jesus conquered them, and then we will see you guys later, but we'll get to that in a second. All right. Lilith in Jewish mythology and thought was kind of wacky what they thought. Obviously, it's not true. They thought that Lilith was the second wife of Adam, who was like a demon thing, and she was also like was like the wife of Satan too, or something really weird. Like not true at all. Like obviously completely false. Like no, like that's not true. Obviously, right? That's
Yeah.
what the Bible says. It was obviously Jewish mythology, which isn't the Bible. Obviously, not mythology, but obviously it was a little wacky. It was like that's not true. Okay, but
Okay.
the Bible does mention something about Lilith, and it talks about her as like a night demon. She's like a girl demon, quote unquote. I'll kind of get into what I think, how in the world that works, because all these fallen angels and angels are guys. They're all male. From what we know, they appear as male and all that stuff, right? But
yeah,
this one seems to be girl, quote unquote. But I'll get into why we think that. So anyway, Isaiah 34:14 says, "And wild animals shout me with hyenas. The wild goat shall cry to his fail." Actually, that means satyr. That's the satyr. It says there the night bird, and then in Hebrew it says Lilith settles and finds for herself a resting place. The Lilith is also the terror of the night. You will not fear the terror of the night, or in Hebrew, Lilith, nor the arrow that flies by day. Psalm 91:5. Lilith was a well-known Mesopotamian demon goddess of the time. So, the only way that she could be a girl. Here's my theory. Check this out. Giants. Hold on. Demons are giants. Hold on. Right?
yeah,
Now, if you wanted to sustain a group of entities, like while they're alive, giants, obviously they were alive before they died. I mean, that's the most dumb thing I've ever said. But yeah, you know what I mean? But, well, they would have had girls. How else would they have kept reproducing? Obviously, they eventually intermarried with humans when they weren't as huge. But for a while, you'd have some girl giants in there too. You didn't always have a guy giant. Now, if you kill a girl giant, the same thing obviously would happen. But it probably was a lot less than the guy giants, because that seems like the majority. There's all these stories about the succubus and the incubus and all this. These these very Lilith-like demons. They always have to do kind of sexual dream stuff. It's kind of crazy, actually, but very creepy too. They always have to do with that kind of thing. So just wanted to throw that out there. I think that she was probably a girl giant. Those things, the incubus, the succubus, and the Lilith things, they're demons. Obviously, they use dreams and stuff to that happens modern day sometimes too. So anyway, I don't know, any thoughts about that? The Bible does mention it. I was like, just saying.
yeah.
So if the
Um,
Bible mentions something, it's obviously true. This is the Bible.
obviously.
So
Can't argue
but
with it.
obviously, right. Go ahead.
Not really too many thoughts that you haven't said.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Here's some crazy stuff there, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to have our grand finale. We're going to talk about the princes really quick. All right. One of the last scripture verses we're gonna pull out here is Daniel 10, boys. Daniel 10. And Daniel 10 is extremely interesting. Now the angel, right, shows up to Daniel and he has a message. So what he says is he's like, I was going to come and give you this message, okay? He says, the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days, but Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, for I was there with the kings of Persia, and came to make you understand what is to happen to your people in the latter days, for the vision is for days yet to come. Now, okay, did you catch anything weird right there? So this is an angel talking.
Okay.
Gabrowski says, the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. Then he says, okay, that's like what? Then it says, but Michael, he's an archangel, one of the chief princes, same word, the princes, came to help me. This is an angel, for I was left there with the kings of Persia and came to make you understand what is going to happen to your people in the latter days. Okay, what? Do you see anything weird there?
I mean, a good bit of it is like confusing, I would say.
Okay, so the angel.
'Cause, I mean, yeah.
Says the prince of the kingdom of Persia
Yeah.
withstood him. No human's gonna withstand an angel. He's not gonna be like, no human's like, angel, you can't come in here, dog. You can't. 21 days. But then Michael, who's an archangel, one of the chief princes, is what it says. Just like the prince of the kingdom of Persia, one of the chief princes, who's an angel, obviously an angel. This is angelic stuff, you know.
Yeah.
He says he came there and helped them, and then he was able to come tell the message. Daniel is in Persia right now, so this angel was not allowed into Persia for 21 days by this prince of the kingdom of Persia, an angel over Persia, and then Michael, one of the chief princes, one of the archangels, showed up, and he was like, "Yo, stinking, get out!" And so, this guy shows up and gets to tell him the message. So, I just think that's extremely interesting.
That is.
Right. And then he ends the conversation, and, they talk about some good stuff. Yeah. But he says, do you know why I've come to you? But now I will return to fight against the prince of Persia, the same angel we were talking about. And when I go out, behold, the prince of Greece will come. The prince of Greece. Hold on. The prince of Greece. Wait. Think about it. All right. Right after, soon after this kind of stuff happens, Greece takes over Persia, and Persia is no more. Greece is there. The prince of Greece will come? Okay. Same language as these other angel stuff that they're talking about. The prince of Greece? Come on.
Come on, man.
Look. So what's really interesting is that, Greece takes over Persia right after this kind of thing. So it seems like whatever happens in the angel world seems to affect the human world. Anyway, really interesting.
Very.
Finally, we have just conquered all of these entities. Okay. Matthew 28:18 says he's leaving. So he's ascending after he was with them for a while. He's peacing out. So he says, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. And behold, I am with you always to the end of the age. Also, that's epic. Okay.
That is an epic verse.
That's epic. But he says that all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to him. Okay. Given. So it's like a present tense kind of thing. Been given. Well, actually, it's past, but it's like recent past. It's like, has been given to me. And he just came back. So it's like rose from the dead kind of stuff, Anyway, it's all very connected to that. But it's also really interesting. So how Israel was not allowed to come to intermingle with the other countries and stuff, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's because they had these gods over them, these little g gods, these angels, and it was their territory. And Israel was God's nation. It talks about that in Deuteronomy 32. For the Lord, but the Lord's portion is Jacob. But what it says is, or something like that. Oh no, that's a different. I think that's a psalm actually. Anyway, that wouldn't make sense for that to be in Deuteronomy. That's a psalm actually. or maybe it's not. I don't know. I'm bad at this. But he says right here to go to the nations after all authority on earth and heaven has been given to him, which seems like there's a change there from like
Yeah.
before and after, obviously with the old covenant, the new covenant, but also this really, really interesting. So seems like him dying and coming back to life disarmed the spiritual supernatural forces and allowed the apostles and us now to go to the other nations and preach to them without getting mauled by a fallen angel because it's their territory. There's another verse, all like the principalities and powers and stuff were put under his feet, all that stuff. I'm not exactly sure where that verse is. I don't remember the stinking scripture reference there, but yeah. So Jesus conquered them all through his death. There's nothing to fear from them. They can't do much to us. I think, well, like we said in the first one, I think they can, just try to deceive us and all that kind of stuff. But again, there's nothing to fear because Jesus conquered them all.
Yes,
and I
sir.
just think it's really interesting that he says that kind of stuff after he came back from the dead, with the nations and all that stuff. So, which I think we'll get into this in like an angel episode or something, but Revelation 12, I think, is talking about Jesus' ascension, his birth and ascension, which is really interesting because that's about the quote unquote fall of the angels. And I think it's really interesting right there because like in the context of the chapter, or like the beginning of the chapter before, is talking about Jesus' birth and his ascension through constellations. Anyway, that's a little foreshadowing there. We'll talk about that later and get into depth about that. Anyway, just wanted to leave with that encouragement that Jesus conquered all of them. So, yeah.
Got nothing to fear.
So thank you guys for listening. I hope you guys found this enjoyable, informational, extravagant, extraordinary, interesting, intriguing, inclusive, exquisite cuisine, a meal of thought per question per chance. Anyway.
And if you did like this video, please consider leaving a like and subscribing if you want more content.
Exactly. And if you guys are on our streaming services, make sure to follow and share to all your friends because we're trying to become the biggest paranormal podcast out there. By paranormal, we're one of the very few. There's a few others, but we're one of the very few paranormal podcasts that tackles it from a biblical perspective. And we're like not like, I don't know if I describe this as a paranormal podcast, but we're like a Bible theology podcast that also gets into the paranormal. So
yes.
Anyway, so love you guys. Thank you guys for listening. Tune in next week for Satan. And now this sounds a little creepy, but we are doing a episode where we're going to talk about all the stuff the Bible says about Satan. So
make sure to tune in.
Yeah, make sure to tune in, guys. All right. I'm going to leave you guys with this scene from the new Nefarious movie. All right. We'll see you guys later. Bye.
See ya.
Do you think I'm evil, James?
Evil isn't a clinical diagnosis. Good and evil are societal constructs, effectively subjective value statements.
Do you think my victims thought I was evil?
Why is it so important that I think you're evil?
Legionum mihi nomen est, quia multi sumus.
Sorry, my Latin's a little rusty.
My name is Legion, for we are many. See, James, is not just about you or Edward, for that matter. It's about everyone. The entire human race. All of us against all of you.
Well, if that's the case, your side's not doing too well.
Do you really believe that, James?
Yeah. We've never been freer. Literacy is at an all-time high. We're working to eliminate racism, intolerance, gender inequality. People can love who they want, be who they want, do what they want. Diversity is no longer a dream. Hate speech is no longer tolerated. And politically, we're reclaiming the moral high ground.
I think I love you. Literacy, James. James, the average high school graduate reads at a 6th grade level. You have basketball players making $30 million a year decrying racism, all while wearing sneakers made from slave labor. Now, here's something for you. Right now, your world currently has 40 million slaves. More than the Romans had at the height of their empire. You want to know the best part, though? Half of those, half, are sex slaves, James. As for hate speech, well, you want to hear some irony? We didn't even come up with that one. You did it all by yourself. Sometimes you amaze even us.
I fail to see the humor.
Bottom line is you're done. It's over, that's it. And we did it all right to your face, James. And now there's evil everywhere. And no one even cares.
Yeah, I don't agree.
Proving that we achieved our goal. Slowly, with your movies, your TV, and your media. We desensitized you. Redirected your worldview to the point that you can't even recognize evil when it's right in front of your face. More to the point, James, you can't even feel it when you're doing it. And as for winners and losers, well. That gets decided at the time of death. The exact numbers are a closely guarded secret, but there are more of you ending up in my master's house than with the enemy. A lot more, Jimmy.